Before you listen to today's episode, I'm just asking you to give this recording a little bit of grace. There are quite a few glitches in the sound, and I had just had several storms where trees had fallen down and taken out power lines. I was out of electricity. I did not have electricity for 24 hours. And if you can believe the horror in this, I did not have the internet for 5 days. And let me tell you, you don't realize how much you rely on the internet until you don't have the internet to rely on. So I attempted to start recording via hotspot. It did not work very well. So I had to run over to my girlfriend's house because she had internet and record there. So it's a little bit glitchy. It's not the best sound quality. So I apologize for that. It's rocky in places for sure, but it is absolutely worth your time to listen to. And this was a recording in an episode that I had been so looking forward to recording. And it carries so many incredible messages of self-knowing and self-acceptance. So please just give me a little grace and recognize that you just sometimes got to roll with it in life. So here you go with today's episode with Dr. Judith Orloff. Hi, I'm Dr. Amy Robbins, and welcome to Life, Death, and the Space Between podcast. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and medium, and here we explore life, death, consciousness, and what it all means. Transforming the face of psychiatry, Judith Orloff, MD, asserts that we are the keepers of an innate, intuitive, and empathic intelligence so perceptive that it can help us heal and prevent illness. Yet these qualities, along with spirituality, are the very aspects of our wisdom often disenfranchised from our conventional care. Dr. Orloff is accomplishing for psychiatry what physicians like Dean Ornish have done for mainstream medicine. She is proving that the links between physical, emotional, and spiritual health can't be ignored. The Nation magazine calls her one of the frontier people in health, who is unsatisfied with the existing order and pushes for an expansion of knowledge. And I couldn't actually not agree more. Dr. Orloff is a New York Times bestselling author and is on the UCLA psychiatric clinical faculty. She received her medical degree from the University of Southern California School of Medicine and completed her psychiatry residency at UCLA. Dr. Orloff comes from a lineage of 25 physicians in her family, including both parents. She specializes in treating empaths and sensitive people in her Los Angeles-based practice and online internationally. She has written 8 books. Did I count correctly? 8?
Yes.
8 books. And her newest book, Affirmation for Empaths, is a weekly journal for reflection on 52 affirmations to help sensitive, caring, empathic people flourish. Each week's offering is an affirmation on a single page, followed by blank pages for writing, drawing, and dreaming. Welcome, Dr. Orloff, to the show.
Thank you. It's so great to be on your show, Amy.
Thank you. Thank you so much for everybody who has supported the podcast. So there's so many ways you can support the podcast and the work that I'm doing. One, you can spread the word. This podcast has grown completely organically. It is all because of you all sharing the podcast. And we are coming up on 1 million downloads, which is amazing. Other ways that you can support the podcast is through Patreon. So if you would like to become a patron, you can go to Patreon, put in Dr. Amy Robbins. You can find different tiers to support the podcast at the $5, $10, or $20 level, or any other denomination. And my $20 supporters do get once quarterly Zoom calls with me. They've been fabulous. If you benefit from the podcast, if your life has shifted or changed as a result of the podcast, please help me continue to help you have on these great guests. Also, follow me on Instagram, Dr. Amy Robbins. I love hearing from my listeners. And lastly, rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you all for all of your support, for all of your love, for all of your helping to collectively raise the consciousness of this planet. I am so incredibly grateful. Let's start because I'm really curious about your path to where you are today and the view from a psychiatrist, from a trained MD in terms of spirituality and intuition in our lives.
Great question. Now, I'm a psychiatrist, and I did my training at USC for medical school and UCLA for my psychiatric residency program, and also the VA hospital, which gave me a year of working with veterans, which was great experience. What I do is combine my traditional medical skills with empathic gifts and intuition. They all mix beautifully. And so, that's the bulk of my teachings in terms of what I want to get across to you. And affirmations for empaths is how to embrace your empathic gifts. It's something you add on. It's not something that you fight with. You can be incredibly analytic and scientific and also be incredibly intuitive and empathic. But if you are intuitive and empathic, you must learn skills not to take on the suffering of the world or other people's suffering, because that won't serve you. And then you'll be on sensory overload. So affirmations for empaths will help sensitive people stay out of sensory overload, which is a zone you really don't want to get in too often or ever, because it's extremely painful. And it's too much is coming at you too fast. The lights, the sounds, the people, the voices, the demands, it can just, make you explode. So you don't, as an empath and sensitive person, part of your self-care is really not getting to that place and noticing if it begins to build so you can nip it in the bud. I've treated so many empathic people who are so gifted, but they're so burnt out from caring excessively about other people and worrying and caring and praying for other people and just, using all their energy for other people, when you need to find a balance. You need to find that center, the affirmations for empath. I am a centered empath. I do not have to take on the suffering of the world. It's a worthy meditation for a week. I am a centered empath, and I do not have to take on the suffering of the world. And then write in the journal about what comes up for you with that, because a lot of times what comes up for people is, if I am not a martyr and I don't take on other people's suffering, I'm not a good person. Definition of a good person or a compassionate person in certain spiritual paradigms. And so what the affirmations book can help you do is reevaluate that. And you'll see on one page the affirmation itself. And then on the other page, you'll have,
getting this out. Yeah.
Line pages. And I like lines. It helps me organize myself in journal. And you'll be able to write about, why is this important to me? What are my resistances? What new thinking can I bring into this to make it more practical and powerful in my life? And so the affirmation is the springboard for this kind of internal inquiry about how you can make it work in your life, thus avoid sensory overload and, a lot of the other downfalls of being an empath.
It's like a little therapy session in a book, because I think, as you're talking, when you say, okay, well, if I don't help other people, then in some way, I'm not good enough, or, in order to be, how I define myself is by helping others. And so when I set a boundary, what does that mean to me? That's really digging in, like one would do in a therapy session, and looking at, okay, what is the meaning? How am I making meaning behind this role that I've given myself?
Exactly. And that's so exciting to me, that one could be honest enough to go in and really explore that, because you want to learn and grow, and you want to, always question authority. I'm a big believer in questioning authority, finding out what's true for yourself and your own experience. So some of these affirmations might take you back to your childhood and certain beliefs that were ingrained in your upbringing that may not suit your temperament and your sensibilities today. And so it's really worthwhile reevaluating that. It's extremely simple, not a lot of words, and it's more, here are prompts for you to do the exploration on the written page, and doodle and poetry or whatever you want to come out. You don't have to be super serious about it. That's not the point. But you need to flow. You need to honestly, with your heart, go in and examine beliefs that maybe aren't working for you anymore, which is fine. It's true for all of us. You're open and inquisitive and honest and really willing in a simple, powerful, true way to look at certain aspects of yourself for the purpose of being a wonderfully empowered, empathic, intuitive, loving, spiritual person, somebody who can feel this reality here that, is ordinary waking reality, but can also know there's a larger reality that can come into play. Call it a higher power, call it energy, call it love, call it universal intelligence, whatever verbiage feels comfortable for you. I don't care what you call it, but you need to know how to find it and what stops you from finding it. So that's a very worthy endeavor to investigate that so that you aren't stuck in this myopic view of the world as the mind will keep us in this very small view of the world that's only logical, and not everything fits into logic. So you need to expand. And that's what I want this book to do for people. I want to give you permission to expand into maybe more natural ways of being you.
What is your working definition of empath? Because I feel like that word now has gotten it's being thrown around a lot lately. And how do we help people move from using I'm an empath as almost like a victim statement, like, oh, well, I'm an empath, to an empowering place of like, I'm an empath. And I think your journal does this. And I have to say, I know this is the book out now, but for anybody who's looking at your work, don't just get the journal, get all of it. Because I found in reading through it, each book is like a stepping stone to the next.
The 20-question self-assessment test to determine if you're an empath in the front of my initial book. So if you have any doubts, to find out if you're a full-fledged empath, a moderate empath, a slight empath, or not an empath. Not everyone's an empath, and not everyone has to be an empath. It's not better or worse. It's just a type that is important to bring to the forefront. But an empath is very open, but sometimes they're so open, they don't know how to balance themselves in terms of being on the suffering of the world or the suffering of animals or the destruction of life. You have to learn how to deal with it better so that you can benefit from all of the positive, the love for humanity, the love of nature, balance that so it's not taken away by the challenges of taking on too much energy or feeling the toxicity, of various people like the narcissist or the drama queen or the victim. And I go through all the different types. There's a part in the journal where you list those people in your life so that you're aware of who they are. Not maybe or not making excuses for them, but I feel drained around this person because they criticize me all the time and I can't take it. That's fine. Write it down. And then how do you set boundaries? So the empath has the positive points and it has the challenges. Even if you only have one or two empathic traits, such as you prefer being around just a few people, the reason it's good to know about it is so you can honor it. You don't want to be pushed into going to big events if you hate them. It's just a way of honoring yourself. I just don't like them. But you see what empaths do is they think there's something wrong with them, that they don't like them because it's not socially acceptable. In a way, you're growing up to think the more popular you are, the more people you have around you, the better. An empath, that's just not true.
And that's you knowing yourself too, right? I think so often, I was just talking with patients about this week. Because of what our society has valued, we value more, right? More friends, a bigger party, whatever it is, versus intimate. And I was saying I was just out of the country, and in other countries, it just seems like maybe this is me just idealizing, but that there's just a focus on like real, genuine connection. And that might just be with one or two or three people in your community, in your neighborhood, but that part of any of our, I think, exploration is recognizing who we are and what we can tolerate. And so this is, I think, even great for people who aren't necessarily identified as empaths, but as a way to get to know, oh, yes, when I have this person in my life, they make me, I feel drained when I leave them, or I feel, sometimes I'll say slimed, like I just feel slimy after they leave. Empath, not empath, that's just important information to have.
It really is. And it's everyone listening. It's so important to honor that and not judge it. It doesn't matter if a million other people experience it differently. Like as a physician, I often hear from patients, and I've experienced myself, like if I take a medication of some sort, and I have a side effect from it, and I've been told, oh, no, that's not in the PDR. That's not a side effect of this medication. And it's like, yes, it is. I'm experiencing it. Mm-hmm. They say the real zinger is, well, no one else has ever experienced it. Like I could care less if anybody else has ever experienced it. This is for everyone listening. I'm experiencing it. I've always been like the only one who's experienced this, that, or the other. And I don't care. It's my experience. And so empaths, as you begin to honor the affirmations, you'll know that traditional medicine is limited sometimes with what they tell you. They have some pluses, they have some minuses. And understanding your empath nature is not one of their pluses. They don't get it, a lot of those doctors. However, they can offer you other things. You want to get the best from conventional medicine, plus just know they're not going to understand you. From my point of view, that's fine, because I go there, needing if they could give me, if I have a broken arm and they fix it, I'm very grateful. Mm-hmm. It would be better if they understood me, but they don't all do that. And I encourage everyone to find at least one other empath. You need to have people who understand you, say, hey, I get it. If you say, I'm tired, I can't go out tonight, you say, I'm disappointed, but I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Take care of yourself. That's what's most important.
Can you be an extrovert and an empath?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Sure. Most empaths are introverts, but an extroverted empath is somebody who loves to socialize and loves the small talk and loves to get out there. So when they come home, they have to decompress. Yeah, you identify? Yeah.
I think, it sounds like, although I'm noticing the older I get, the more I'm feeling the pull to not be quite as social.
Yeah, but the socials, that's great. You love social, fantastic. So it just depends on what you are. Whatever you are is perfect. And that's why I love affirmations, because it's about repeating it a week per affirmation. I am complete as a person. I do not have to socialize with large groups, or whatever the affirmation is. You wake up every day, eat breakfast, then do your day, but have that in your mind that that's how you're going to try and integrate it in a positive way, so that it can sink into your subconscious through repetition. And repetition has been used for manipulation, and it's been used for healing. But repetition is a tool. It's a tool, and it's important to gently affirm these new beliefs, so the old beliefs don't have the power of living rent-free in your psyche.
So you're rewiring those neurons, those pathways.
You are. You're rewiring them. You're deepening the heart and what comes from the heart versus old beliefs that come from the head. And I just want to say, some of the challenges that I've had is that people say, well, isn't this emotional bypassing? Isn't this toxic positivity? No, toxic positivity is like the Stepford wives. The Stepford wives lived in a perfect little community, and they were perfect housewives, and they pushed the cart, and they had the babies, and they never went against their husbands, and and they were robots, basically. The theme of the movie is people escaping from the robot world so they could go back into the human world. But toxic positivity is when you just put on a horrible smile and you don't deal with your shadow aspects or your fears or your anxieties. No, but that's not what I'm saying. You affirm, what's positive. And at other times you deal with you're doing both. You're dark and you're light. This is just to enhance your light a little bit. And believe me, we all need that. And that's what toxic positivity is. And the bypassing would be not dealing with, well, I'm really feeling tired and upset today. So that it's not bypassing. It's not toxic positivity. It's a skill that's added on the other skills that you've learned in your healing process. So I just want to make that point for those of you who've heard those terms. They're very popular terms in our culture today. It's interesting.
Yeah, they are. And I'm not hearing that. I sort of have like antennas when I hear the sort of toxic positivity. And I think when I'm listening to what you're talking about and look through the books, this notion of like, let's understand why you're feeling the way you're feeling. That's where I think the piece of it not being toxic or not bypassing is. It's not just saying like, I think in one of them, it's like, I am a warrior, or here, let me see. I tune into my energy level. I know how I am feeling and respect my body's needs. That's not saying I'm going to ignore the feelings that come up that are bad. That's saying like, I need to recognize what I need and honor that. And sometimes that might not be positive. That might be being in a space of being upset and angry.
Mm-hmm. Or I'm hurting. I'm in pain. I hurt right now. I don't know why. I just hurt. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then tune into your body. I'm a big believer in embodied learning, where you tune into your body and say, where, honey, do you hurt? I hurt in my stomach, and it's like your little girl in there going, I'm hurting. They hurt my feelings. I'm in pain. I feel like I'm going to be abandoned. Whatever fear, some fears are more up for some people than others, but we have all of them, everybody. So, don't feel like you're weird or it's not right, or by now you should have gotten over this. You don't get over anything. You just become more whole.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think more able to deal. Like more able to cope.
Yeah, that's the good point. The more you can practice these affirmations, the better you're going to feel, the better you're going to be able to cope with things, the more power you're going to have over the negative voices in your head or the conditioned voices, so you can tame them. A lot of people might argue with me, but I don't believe that you ever get rid of them. I believe.
I'm with you.
Are you okay? They're like wild animals that could do horrible damage unless you're conscious of them and that you tame them and you just keep them back. And when they rear up, you go, oh, hello there, back. I'm not listening to you. I'm not listening to the voice that's telling me I'm unworthy and not beautiful and old and sick and I'm never going to get better, or whatever these negative, wild voices say that are untrue.
Yeah, I like the way you phrase that. You tame them. When I work with people with like anxiety and they say, when will my anxiety be gone? It might never be gone, but you'll learn better how to manage it. And when it rears its head, you'll know how to tame it, how to say, okay, not now, or this isn't the place, or these are the skills that I now have that I can put into place so you don't control me. The inmates don't get to run the prison.
Exactly. And that empowers you. You don't control me. And the anxiety gets a lot better. The more you do this, I want to emphasize, you will feel better and better and more with life as it comes. And realizing, you brought up the word spiritual, that there's a spirituality to life that's ever present. And the everyday world of schedules and to-do lists and just the everyday world is one level. But there's also, if you practice meditation, I have meditated for 30 years. And especially since the pandemic started, it was important for me to up my practice. So, get more connected to myself during this crazy time and more connected to spirit. And everybody can do this. And it's not going to go against any religious training that you had. It just is in sync with whatever your spiritual tradition is. It's in sync with it. Because there's, I practice Taoism, which is there's one path and all paths lead to the Tao. So the Christian path, the Jewish path, the Muslim path, the Baha'i path, whatever path. There are lots of different paths, but they all channel, up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can I ask you a professional question about I'm very curious what your work looks like. Because I think for me, I've always struggled with how to kind of explain how I use my intuition in my work. So I'm wondering if maybe you have a better way of explaining it.
Well, I kind of have an advantage because a great number of people who come to have read my books. So they're kind of primed to, they know, especially my first book, Second Sight, which details, how I came out initially as a empathic psychiatrist and all the fears I had and integrating traditional medicine. But when a patient comes in to see me, I listen with my linear mind to what they're saying and ask them questions. And at the same time, I'm listening with my intuition and my empathy to be able to feel what other insights might come to me. All right. I would say over 50% of what I pick up, I don't share right away.
Mm-hmm.
I often phrase it in terms that aren't intuitive. I'll phrase it in terms of questions because it's not important to me to get credit for how accurate I am with my intuitions, although it's always fun, But in terms of working with people, I don't need to get credit for it, but I do need to use my own intuitions to help steer people in the right direction. So it's better if they could come up with these insights themselves. Better, much better.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say this has happened to me so many times with a patient where about to get into a relationship with somebody and they're just, over the moon with happiness. And Judith, what do you think of this? Which is not the question to ask me because I don't operate that way. People tend to overcompensate when they're developing their intuition, they're therapists and they want to help people. They tend to want to do too much work for their patients. I don't. I really trust that if they get a little bit of knowledge, most of them can run with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that helps support them in their strengths rather than you don't want them being this passive person who comes in and looks at you like a psychic reader. That's not going to help them at all.
Right.
They get empowered and leave you, eventually.
Yeah. And I feel like there's so much, even just in our conversation today, that has probably helped people, those who are in the healing professions, but also just those who are out and about in their lives to really be paying attention to how you're feeling and responding to things. So, Dr. Orloff, can you tell my listeners where they can find your book, drjudithorloff.com?
Well, the books and the webinars and everything's on my website, but it goes to different places. Like some go to Amazon, the online course goes to Sound True or the Shift Network. So there's a whole lot of materials there. If you're an empath or you're a healer, an empathic healer, and you want to learn to work with it in a bit of a deeper way, this Affirmations for Empaths book can go with everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy and it's simple and it won't take too much of your time, but will allow you to explore throughout the day. So I'm really loving this book. I really love it because it's simple. I mean, the more I grow, the simpler I like things. I don't like complex things, that require a lot of thinking, or mental activity. More growth and heart and movement and really congratulate yourself, all you empaths out there. I mean, maybe you just learned from our conversation you are one. How exciting is that? It's never too late. I've worked with women, not so much men in their 90s, but women in their 90s. Oh my God, I'm an empath, 92. Like, how beautiful is that? Is it too late? No, it's never too late.
Well, and it's interesting. I'll tell you this before we leave. And I can't remember if I've talked about this on my podcast, but my son, who's 13 now, he said to me a couple weeks ago, Mom, sometimes I feel like I can walk down the street and feel other people's sadness. What do I do? How do I manage that? So I feel like for him, like these books, and I think we think about this more as that more women tend to be empaths, but I think that so many men are as well. And because of how our society socializes that out of them, that we lose a lot of like their sensitivity. And in talking with him, I don't want him to lose it. It's so special. But as society kind of grabs hold and what is considered masculine versus feminine, takes over, I think it's harder, particularly for young boys and men, to embrace that sensitivity because it's such a beautiful thing.
It's so true. And your son is in such a beautiful position where he could balance his, more linear being along with his sensitivities. And he might want to listen to this interview I just did with a man named Parker Edson, who is, I think about 30, and he's just coming to his empathic abilities. He's a rapper, and he has a show on PBS. A rapper who's an empath. I mean, you would never, ever think that, but it's true. And he talks about his kind of listen in our conversation. He's awakening more and more. And he's like, oh my God. I'm speechless. I'm this, I'm a man. I have this. And, that makes me so happy. I love him and I think he's incredible. I think he's a wonderful role model and for men, for other men, and I celebrate the empathic nature of men. Conclude with saying, you don't have to be an empath. It's fine. Like in terms of, my partner in life, not an empath. I don't want him to be an empath. I would go crazy if I had a partner who was an empath. It would be just too much going on all the time. We were driving and he said, what are you feeling? And he goes, feeling? He goes, I'm driving.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who asked their partner those questions.
It's funny and it's perfect, for me, because you have to find your mix and match with friends or students or teachers. Anything is fine. Whatever your preference is fine as long as it's from the heart.
Well, Dr. Orloff, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for your patience with my internet situation because I lost internet and you were very patient with me to where I could find another place to go that it worked. So I'm so grateful for your time. For anybody who's interested, Affirmations for Empaths, the new book. Again, if you didn't hear me say it before, don't just get this book. I think that this is one of just so many. The ones that I've looked at and read are really resonant. And I'm appreciative of that. And it's going to be next to my bedside. I have a big stack of books next to my bedside because I read so many for the show, and each one of them has something that I feel like is so important. And especially, I know this isn't your current book, but Thriving as an Empath, and it's 365 days of self-care, which is beautiful. And just flipping through it, you can see, oh yeah, like I need to let loose a little bit. I need to release fear, all of these things that I think are valuable for any human being, not just empaths. I know it's for empaths, but I don't think it's just for empaths. So thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Like what you heard today and want to hear more? Wondering what comes next and what it all means? Head over to Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere you get your podcasts and hit subscribe. Also, if you could take a minute to rate and review my podcast, I would really appreciate it. Stay tuned as we continue to explore life, death, and the space between.